Okay, let's look at the stock market. We're going to use technical analysis to be our guide looking for trade ideas. So if you guys find value, drop me a thumbs up. If you're interested in getting additional market insights, feel free to join in the private member group. Link in the description below. Okay, let's get into it. There's some stuff going on this morning. I think it's important. Okay, so triple Qs. Couple things. Triple Qs recently put in that bearish engulfing candle right there. And we talked about that. I talked about that in multiple videos, saying to treat that as a top. And it doesn't have to be the top, but when you get these, you look for these at the end of extended uptrends. And we also we have just more negative divergence. You see the divergence? We made a new divergent high in price right here in this cluster. Higher high in price, lower high in momentum. Also look at the PPO starting to cross over. It actually has crossed over. So you now have that. So in general, we now have, we basically have the makings of a top, okay? And the bearish engulfing was the candle to treat as a top. And what I talked about was just stop out if it closes above. The risk reward in the last couple days was very favorable because in general, you had a top to trade against. If you were wrong, you knew exactly where you were wrong, and you wouldn't be wrong by a lot, maybe 1%, maybe 1 or 2%, giving it a little room. And then ultimately, if you're right, I would assume that we're going to go make some new lows. In general, there's lots of lows that we can target. The bottom of this trading range, and I know my chart's a real mess because it's been kind of a battleground, but here's the trading range that we were in for a long time. So I would say that's a decent target for a near-term bottom before we get a little bounce. Now, I don't think the bounce is going to be off to new highs because, again, this is a new divergent high, and it has a bearish engulfing candle. It's all the makings of a significant top, which means the top of a trend, all right, which would be this long trend. So now I would be looking for a downtrend. Now, again, I was looking for it here for sure, right here when we started to break down, this, seemed like a top. However, I was long down here at the bottom. All right, I closed my shorts. We hit support. I went long, started to reshort it, I believe, right around in this area. And then when we popped back into the trading range, I stopped out. All right, it didn't make sense to hold on to those shorts because we were, once you enter the trading range, it's very common to head to the opposite end of that trading range, which was the top. Sure enough, hit the top, we popped. I wasn't short for any of that. So, but now I am short again on triple Qs. And also we're back into the trading range. Now we'll see how we close the day. Maybe the bulls will step in and they want to try to hold this and give it another bounce up. That's possible. I can see that. But if we close the day back into the trading range, then I would assume that we're going to head to the bottom of the trading range. Okay. Flipping over to the weekly chart, and my chart's really messy, but on the weekly chart, the divergent high that we just made, you can see here kind of big things happening on this one as well. Look at the negative divergence right there on the weekly. All right, we've got just a big, long, continued divergence. And if you really go back and look at really the last time we had negative divergence, it comes before these big drops is really where you see it. So that, like right here, here's a divergent high. There's negative divergence, and that negative divergence on the weekly brought us the big drop in 2022. So we have that again right here, and it's very, looks about the same on the weekly. We also, as of right now, have a weekly engulfing candle, a bearish engulfing candle on the weekly chart. So that is also signifying a major top on the triple Qs on the weekly chart. And the weekly chart brings you, long trends that typically can last many months to, even years sometimes. So keep an eye out on that, but that is looking, as of right now, like a bearish engulfing. Now, again, we also had a bearish engulfing on the weekly right here, and it was followed by, a rally. But this one's different because this weekly engulfing, as of right now, is also a bearish engulf, or is also a divergent high, whereas this one was not. Okay, this one was just a drop, and this one is a drop and it's a divergent high. So there's a lot more going on that one. And flipping over to the NASDAQ futures, you can see here, we're clearly in that range now. The futures, you can see, look, you hit resistance, worked your way, broke down, rallied back into the range, and then hit resistance again, broke out to new highs, but those highs were divergent highs, and they're now being sold into, and we're back down into that range. So that's bearish, to see, really the bulls should have held it right in here at that former resistance, which would be support. That's where the bulls should have been, and then off it goes to new highs. But it didn't do that. And so the fact that it can't hold that support level and it's now broken back into the range, also, it's never been able to make new momentum highs. It's continued to diverge on the highs in price while momentum continues to lag behind. It's negative divergence. So very likely going to get sold into, and well, it is being sold into, and I think it will continue. Okay, so that's the futures. Now, of course, the day's not over, so we do need to kind of see how we close the day. That's also going to be important. But if as we go along, it continues to look like we are going to hold the breakdowns and continue to break down, then I think that's just a further signal that we have seen a top in the tech sector. So now let's go to the individual stocks, the ones that make up really the tech sector, which are the Mag 7. Nothing else matters. NVIDIA is obviously the king right now because NVIDIA is what's been holding this market up. Down today, I don't see any signs here or signals that NVIDIA is, that the top is in on NVIDIA, but the one thing I do see is negative divergence remains. You'll see here on the momentum, look, we just continue to have divergence. Even the big impulsive high that they got off their earnings right there is just another divergent high. So that's negative divergence. Very likelihood it will get sold into. Doesn't mean it can't run up and pop and make a new high, a new divergent high. So we don't just short negative divergence. I need to see breakdowns of, support, things like that. But there it is. And then the PPO is starting to turn down, not completely, but it is a divergent high even on the PPO. So we have, pieces that are starting to look bearish on NVIDIA, but we don't have the full picture. So I think, start taking out some of these gaps. There's also this uptrend line right here. I like the uptrend line. I think we break that. That's going to be the sell signal I'd be looking for on NVIDIA. Microsoft, which is actually the largest company in the world. Even though all the hype has been with NVIDIA, Microsoft's the largest company. So it has the heaviest weighting in the S&P 500 and the triple Qs, I believe. This one clearly, breaking down. And look, this was the divergent highs. I know a lot of people say, oh, divergence doesn't work. It doesn't matter. It doesn't usually work at the moment that the divergence shows up. It does typically work. It does typically play out. It does signal usually the fact that you're going to get a reversal. But again, you want to wait to really hone in your entry. You want to wait for sell signals, breaks of support, things like that. Bearish engulfing candles, things that tell us that the top is in. So divergence is the condition. And then, on this one, you had the negative divergence. You can see right here, boom, there's your negative divergence, just continuing to rebuild. This has been building really for a while. And then the top, you have a bearish engulfing candle right there on Microsoft. That, if you treated that as the top, and that's why I have it marked out right here, 433.66. If you treat that as the top, then you basically had a great entry. And Microsoft's just, selling off pretty impulsively. So, yeah, I think you got some more downside in Microsoft. I see some support down here, 397-ish. So you're probably going to hold there for a bounce. But in general, it does look like a big topping pattern to me. We keep making these new divergent highs and getting sold into after making them. Meta, this one again has this island cluster top pattern. I talked about it for quite a while. And in general, it remains. So that is an island cluster top, which means it is the top, typically. Now, if we continue to trade up and go through there, that would negate that as the top. But that hasn't happened. It is, so until that happens, I'm treating this as the top, which means, a daily close above the, really a daily close above the highs, 531-ish, right in there. That would negate that, and that would be where I'd stop out. Otherwise, I think we got a lot of downside here on Meta. This one also, again, broke that uptrend line. There's your uptrend. All right, that started back in October of 2022. There's your solid uptrend. There's your island cluster top, gap down, trapping all these longs, and now I think you get the flush out, the wash, the move down. And again, we had this little support shelf right here. Seems like we're starting to break it today. So that's what I'm watching for today. If that breakdown that we have as of right now can hold. And if it does, then I think minimum we're heading down to fill this gap. We never filled this gap at 402, so that's where I think it's heading. And you have the 200-day simple moving average just below. Apple still hanging in there. Again, Apple had already kind of sold down quite a bit, so Apple could continue to go higher. Sorry, I couldn't get that word out. Apple could continue up here. Resistance about 198. All right, and if it does that anytime soon, I think you will put in a divergent high. But yeah, I don't see anything super negative there in Apple that makes me want to short that one. And then let's go to Google. Google's starting to break down. Google still has that divergence, negative divergence. It remains. And did burn through it a little bit down here on the PPO. So yeah, Google again is not super bearish either. I could easily see it chopping around a little bit more. To me, I got some support here, and I'd like to see maybe a reaction there to help validate that as a trend line, and then ultimately a break of that would be a sell signal. So Google, not my favorite. And then Amazon is continuing to break down. This one was a short. This was a bearish rising wedge here. We shorted this down here to support. It did bounce, but today taking that out. So that's a sell signal there in Amazon as well. So we've got sell signals on multiple of these Mag 7s, not all of them, but multiple. When you see sell signals in all of them, that's when the market's going to basically crash. I don't know if we'll get that. We might just get kind of sell signals in some, and then, because what we see, or what I typically see in these things, is like a game of whack-a-mole. Some sell off, some hold up, then others sell off, and the other ones hold up, and they kind of rotate money back and forth in these things, so that could ease the market down. But in general, it does look like the top is in on triple Qs, and as long as that bearish engulfing remains without a daily close above it, then these Mag 7s should continue to go lower. And then Tesla's not really a Mag 7 anymore. It's hanging in there. Again, I talked about this being in the middle of the range. Resistance up here in the 200-day, 207-ish. Support down in this area down here, about 146. And we're just right in the middle. So 50-50. I don't know which way it goes. Okay, bonds. So here's TLT. Bonds rising today, which means interest rates are coming down a little bit. So that should help the markets, typically. But, that's a one-day thing, because in general, when you look, we have a clear downtrend. All right? We have a clear downtrend in bonds, which means it's a clear uptrend in interest rates. The market wants cheap and easy money from the Fed. Everything is trading off the Fed. Earnings doesn't even matter. I mean, on NVIDIA's front, yeah, earnings matters because obviously it gets these huge moves up on the earnings. But the market as a whole, once you get through kind of those gappy earnings season, is trading on what's the Fed going to do? Is the Fed going to give us the easy money, and can we get the party started? Party back on, and that's it. It's basically they want bad economic news so that the economy starts kind of crashing and forcing the Fed to cut rates, and in general, the entire market is trading on what the Fed's going to do with those interest rates. So today, this is just a little rally in bonds, but there's no technical change. We have a downtrend, and we have, an uptrend in interest rates, which should continue to put pressure on stocks over the next coming months until we get a technical change. Gold, here's the gold miners. Again, gold is interest rate sensitive for sure, but still hanging in there a little bit. But in general, on like GDX, you've got this trend line was broken. All right, so we broke here. That's a sell signal back test. Consolidating, I think we're heading lower down to this range, this zone of support, about 32.50 or so. And that's where I see kind of gold heading in the near term, and the miners. Here's oil, USO. Oil's still holding the uptrend. You can see here, support, 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 support. We're at it again. It's just sitting there at support. So no technical change. This is where the buyers should be stepping in. If we break down, we get, break this level, that would be a sell signal. And, but otherwise we should hold support and continue to rally. So, okay, and I'll wrap up with the semiconductor ETF. The semis obviously have been the center of all the AI hype, so it's very important to watch. So on this one, I had this potential trend line, 1 support, 2 supports. I do not have a third reaction, so we'll see how today's price action plays out. If this is going to hold this support, we're kind of right there now. So maybe you get a little bounce here, and that would give you a trend line to watch for a breakdown or a sell signal. The semis recently put in a new divergent high. There it is. That is a higher high over the former high, and yet momentum wasn't able to do the same thing. So it's just continuing the divergence, negative divergence. So to me, it tells me that very likely that is the top, given the fact that Triple Qs has that big bearish engulfing, and we're going to see, substantial selling. But again, on the semis, we need a little more information there, a little more proof that we are going to sell down. So I'd watch for this potential trend line. Again, I only have 2 data points. Can't fully make it out to be a trend line yet. You break that, then that's probably going to be your sell signal on the semis. Watch NVIDIA. I pointed out levels to watch there. And I'm going to leave it at that. So drop me a thumbs up on your way out. Catch you guys on the next one.